Today's spotlight for Black History Month is on Willie Mae Thornton, better known as Big Mama Thornton. While she did have her moment, she did not get all of the praise and recognition that she deserved. And as the woman who bridged the gap between blues and rock and roll, she definitely deserves a lot more credit. She was born in 1926 in a very small town in Alabama. Her dad was a preacher, and her mom sang in the choir. She didn't sing so much in the church, but she said that she did a lot of listening. She developed a really spectacular ear for music, and she never really learned to read or write music, but she did learn how to play instruments by ear. She played the drums and the harmonica, and she learned how to play just from listening. Unfortunately, when Willie Mae was only 13 years old, her mom passed away because she contracted tuberculosis. And Willie Mae had never been great at school, but she had fallen really, really behind while her mom was sick because she was taking care of her. And at age 13, she was still just in third grade. And she struggled to read and she struggled to write. And when her mom passed away, she really just didn't see a point at staying in school anymore. So she dropped out and got a job cleaning spittoons at a local tavern. It wasn't a great job, but the owner of the tavern would sometimes let her perform. They'd let her sing and play her harmonica and stuff like that. And she really, really loved to perform for an audience. And she got some attention from people who had connections. By age 14, she was encouraged by the half-sister of another legend named Bessie Smith, who heard her on one of her jobs riding the side of a trash truck just singing. And so she told her that she should try out for a talent show so that she could see if she could be the singer for Sammy Green's Hot Harlem Review. And so at age 14, without a single musical lesson, not knowing how to read or write music, she went down to that talent show and she won. She began touring across the South, and she stayed with that group for about 8 years. When she left the group, she settled in Houston for a while, and she started singing at a place called the El Dorado Ballroom because they would pay her $50 a night. And in 1950, she recorded her very first record. She caught the attention of Peacock Records, and she was signed to a 5-year contract, and she released a few records under their label, and they got some local success, but they weren't really super nationally popular. Things took an upward turn for her in 1952 when she released the song Hound Dog. It was by far her biggest hit. The album sold over 500,000 copies and was number one on the Billboard R&B chart for 7 weeks in 1953. This song was the beginning of a new era, the beginning of rock and roll. The drummer was not getting things quite right, and so Big Mama kind of took some creative liberties, and so the guitar became the principal instrument, and that was kind of the hallmark of rock and roll. Unfortunately, she was definitely not given the credit that she was due for this one. In fact, she only got one royalty check ever from Elvis Presley, who launched his career off of that song, and it was for $500. He took her anthem about the power of Black women and turned it into a very squeaky clean song about a literal dog. While obviously very disappointed with how that happened, Big Mama did not let that stop her from performing. She continued to put out albums here and there. She continued to do live performances. But unfortunately, her career just kind of ebbed and flowed into the 1960s. She moved to California and started to pick up gigs wherever she could. But business was never really that steady. Then in 1961, she wrote another song that would become a major hit, Ball and Chain. It was all about the feelings of a woman who had been mistreated by her partner. She took that song to a company called Baytone Records, and they liked it, but they had some other songs in mind for her, so she recorded those instead, and they decided not to release Ball and Chain until 1968. That same year, she was approached by Janis Joplin, who wanted to do a cover of the song. She at least had the decency to ask, and Willie Mae said, okay, that's fine, because she kind of assumed that she would get some royalties from it, but once again, she was cheated out of an ability to get credit for her work. And Janis Joplin's version got a lot more fame, and Big Mama Thornton got almost no credit. And unfortunately, this was pretty common practice. During the time period when Big Mama Thornton was trying to make her way, there were a lot of situations and legalities that made it so that Black artists were allowed to record music, but they weren't allowed to collect royalties. And there was a lot of red tape to try and actually break this and change this. And unfortunately for Big Mama Thornton, She did all of this work, got very little credit, and so as she continued to age, she could pick up gigs here and there, but for the most part, she couldn't really find the success that she should have had. Big Mama Thornton said, "White or black, rich or poor, if you've ever had your heart broken, you have the right to sing the blues." And unfortunately, she didn't just sing the blues to get rid of her problems. She also turned to alcohol, which would end up causing her death. At the end of her life, she said, "I've been happy. There have been dull moments, but you have to take as worse as you're going to get it, or else you're never going to see it. And I've been happy, and I'd like to stay that way." While Big Mama Thornton didn't get her flowers while she was alive, people cannot deny the impact that she had on music. Her big, powerful voice was a hallmark that really did challenge traditional stereotypes. And she herself broke so many traditional norms for African American women and so many norms for women in general during the time period. She broke a lot of barriers that way, and that kind of helped her take up space in a world that was created for white people. Unfortunately, it was part of what kept her in the shadows, but it also set her apart. However, it can't be denied that she is pretty much the reason that modern rock and roll exists. And in 2024, she finally got a little piece of what she deserved. She was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the musical influence category.